Hi guys, this is Commodore Sound coming to you again from Lower Alabama. What I got for you today is just a little creation that I did, and before I get into that, I wanted to just kind of hit the highlights of Commodore 128. I'm not going to go into the differences between a 128 and a 64 and all of that. There's plenty of videos for that, but I did want to just talk about the different models that are available of the Commodore 128. And so if you're, you might recognize one of them that I've got on the table here. This is a Commodore 128 DCR. Now, if you know Commodores, you know that the DCR is basically a Commodore 128 with a 1571 drive built in and has an external keyboard. This design, of course, you know, the 128 started out, of course, looking like this, and this is what is referred to as the Commodore 128 flat. Most of you know that, but then later on, you know, with they started getting a little fancy, you know, competing with PCs, and people were wanting maybe a little more ergonomic design. I know for me, especially on my 128s, on my 128D or 128, I like to have an external keyboard drawer and a mouse that's kind of set up like a modern interface. I still want retro Commodore 128, so don't get me wrong, but as a daily driver, I like something a little more ergonomic. Certainly as I get a little bit older, it's a little bit easier on the joints and everything else. But anyway, so back to the 128D. Of course, we had the 128D plastic version that you saw a lot in Europe and other countries besides the U.S. But in the U.S., the 128 DCR, or cost revision, or cost reduced device, was, as it's known, it was a metal case, Commodore 128, again with a built-in 1571 disk drive and an external keyboard. This design is really great if you've got it sitting on a table, no hutch or anything else, because you can of course sit your monitor on top of it. Your drive's out of the way because it's down here in the in the front. But if you're a retro enthusiast, it's a little bit of a pain, and maybe even it was a pain back then. I don't remember it being a pain when I was younger, just didn't know any better, didn't have a lot of options. I didn't change my setup a lot, and so it really didn't bother me too much. Also, I didn't have tons of disk drives like I have today, so it didn't bother me having the internal drive in it. But in today's world, as somebody that's into retro stuff and has a lot of drives and has a lot of stuff, the space constraints kind of get me. I'm a little cramped here. Kind of get me when I've got something this size. And then in addition to that, the disk drive on the 128 DCR didn't allow you to change the drive number very easily. You could either go inside and cut the trace and add a switch, or make it permanently a different number, or use software methods to change the number. A lot of different ways to change the number. To make matters worse, a lot of applications, especially 64 applications, expect drive 8 for the load drive, and they sometimes expect a fully 100% compatible 1541 drive to be able to run the program. So a little bit inconvenient at times. In addition to that, if you set it up maybe like you would have back in the day with the monitor on top of it and everything, and you're doing needing a lot of access to the back side of it, again, very inconvenient because you got a monitor and everything else in the way, and it's kind of, again, bulky, and you're going to have things hanging off the side. So getting back here to the back is always difficult. So that has prompted some people, and you'll see some YouTubers, some famous ones, that kind of turn it on its side and put the keyboard down here on right here, instead. to alleviate that need to being able to get to the back and access the cartridge. So all of those things are a little bit aggravating. And there's no perfect solution. Everybody has their solutions that deals with it at some point, but no perfect solutions. And I haven't come up with a perfect solution, but I've come up with one that I like better. Again, what I have done in the past with my 128Ds is I've again kept my keyboard on a keyboard drawer. Well, obviously this cable is not long enough to get to my Commodore to get up to the top of the desktop if I have the 128 sitting up here and getting down to my drawer. So one of the things I have done in the past is use just a ribbon cable or a 25-pin regular cable and plugged it into the side port here. And maybe I'll show you that. So you've got this short cable that comes from the 128D. It of course plugs in to the ports here on this side of the 128D, right? So instead I would plug in the ribbon cable to the side of it and let it go up under my table. And you can even use a longer cable than I've used here, but this is just for demonstration purposes. So that's what I've done in the past and you can even with the ribbon cable, you can even route it up under. If it's long enough to get all the way under, because that ribbon cable doesn't, is thin enough to go under the feet of the 128. So I've done that quite often with my 128 DCRs to manage the keyboard wire. But again, still difficult to get to the cartridge port. Still difficult to, the drive, internal drive has always been a little aggravating to me. Not to mention, I'm typically going to want a drive 8 or some other drive besides a 5 1/4, whether that's my CMD hard drives, whether that's my SD to IEC, whatever it may be, or my UIEC. So any of those are again, inconvenient with this setup. So what I've done is I 3D printed me a different form factor of the 128D and kind of made it look sharp at the same time. So I'm going to disconnect here and I'm going to demo this. I'm going to show you this a little bit closer. And what I've done here, I'm actually running C64 OS on it. I use that operating system a lot on my 64s and my 128s. It is a 64 operating system, but with 128, it's real easy to set it up to where it'll just boot into the operating system, and again that supports my mouse, keyboard. One of the great things about the C64 OS is that you can use a mouse on your Commodore, and they even have networking. And I'm going to do a video on C64 OS and how I use it later on. But right now we're here to talk about this 128 that I have designed to make my life a little bit nicer, a little bit easier, and a little bit sharper looking too. So anyway, or at least I think it is. So let me disconnect that and I'll give you a closer look. Okay guys, I'm back. I've got my, what I call my Plexi128 disconnected. And so this is it. So basically what I've done here is I've taken a 128 flat motherboard and put it inside of a 3D printed case. Now, of course, these case parts, I just have a regular bamboo printer. And so this obviously a piece of, I can't print this all in one piece. I had to print it in multiple pieces. And so I printed these blue, this is what I call, this bamboo is one of the bamboo colors, but it is one that I think matches the old SX64 pretty good. But anyway, I designed this. All this, by the way, is designed in Tinkercad, so you don't have to use a really fancy program to do this, or learn a complicated program. Tinkercad is one that is geared towards everybody from kids to adults, right? So I used Tinkercad and a bamboo printer, and I printed each one of these, I designed and printed each one of these pieces. The only thing that I didn't print on this case is the plexiglass itself. I've got a blue plexiglass sheet that I purchased off of Amazon. That is a 16 by 20 piece of plexiglass. This here is a clear piece of 16 by 20 plexiglass that I purchased off of Amazon. So they're just that's a standard size, and it works pretty good for a Commodore 128 computer. Now I could have made it a little bit thinner in my 3D printed pieces, but I wanted enough room to add in some modules and to be able to have some switches and that kind of thing and not be too cramped. I could have made this, put some screws and made this to where it would stay connected, but I chose to make it to where it just sits in a slot, basically, where I can take it off and I can upgrade my motherboard. Currently, I've got Jiffy DOS and a megabit 128 ROM in the U36, and all of that. So from this case standpoint, again, it's just two pieces of plexiglass sandwiching the motherboard and the 3D printed pieces on the front. Kind of went with a kind of a hood, a car grill look to it that I thought was pretty cool. Anyway, it's my design, so of course I would kind of probably think it's cool. But anyway, you can see that I printed the side panels in two different pieces, and I printed the back panel in a pretty easy block setup. Again, I didn't want to waste a bunch of filament, so I measured it, and really almost every one of these pieces I printed in one go. I didn't reprint, but maybe I think like two pieces I reprinted. Some of it I cheated in that, like on the keyboard port that's coming out the side here, I made a really big hole, and then I did a small cover plate to go on the port so that I could easily fix that in there. One of the things too that I didn't do a lot of heat press. Again, I was just trying to do this easy, cheap, but and simple, and not have to reprint a bunch of times to get it perfect. Again, I'm not trying to mass produce these. I just wanted it for myself. So these side panels are actually super glued onto the bottom panel. The corner pieces and all of this these corner pieces are super glued to that bottom plexiglass, and the panels here, I do have so that I can take everything out. I do have these slotted, this back piece slotted in, so it's just sitting in a slot. This is just sitting on top, so no screws or any of that holding that on. In fact, the only screws that I have holding this together at all is I did make some feet on the bottom of the motherboard, and that I screwed the main board into, and those feet are super glued onto the standoffs, basically off the bottom of the plexiglass. Of course, I've got the DB25 here, or whatever it is. It's not a DB, yeah, DB25, yeah. So I got the DB25 sitting here, screwed on the side. So those are the only screws in it. The screws holding the motherboard down, and the screws holding the keyboard connector in place. Other than that, it is plastic super glued together. And again, I made life easy on myself in that I left the back open. Now, one of the questions that you may have is how did I take, so here's a 128 flat main board, and if you know anything about them, they just have these standard header connection for the keyboard, and it's pins, right? The header pins on the on the 128 main board. So how did I get that to a DB9? Well, I had a donor 128 keyboard that was destroyed by somebody else a long time ago, and I had that in my parts drawer, and so basically, and I'll take this off so that I can show this really well. I'll take this out so it doesn't, well, I'll hold this in so it doesn't fall out, because I do have a Jiffy DOS switch on it. So if you look right here, you can see that I have basically the 128 keyboard connector that was cut off of that donor keyboard, and I basically soldered that into my DB25 here that I have hooked onto the side. So when you do that, one of the interesting things is when you look at this keyboard, this main board here, you would think, okay, I'll just get a gender changer and I'll just use a gender changer to change this this pin header into a DB25. But that will not work because gender changers that you find out there are not wired the way that this needs to be wired. Gender changers are wired so that when you're looking at pin 1 over here, it's pin 1 over here on this other cable. And so with that pin 1, with that scenario, it doesn't work. What they did with the 128 is basically they just did a pass through, right? No translation of pin 1 to pin 1. Actually, pin 1 goes to like pin 13 or 14, and pin 25 goes to pin 14. It's reversed. So here's a good example. If you take 2 DB25s and make your own quote gender changer, then if you just butt them up to one another where the long row is on top over here and the long row is on top over here, and you just butt those up to one another and solder them, that is what I'll call a pass-through gender changer, and not a pin 1 to pin 1 gender changer. And that's basically what's required to take a 128D keyboard and plug it into a 128 motherboard. It's just a straight pass-through. If you so basically you can and I did this initially. You can take this straight through gender changer that goes from a female DB25 to a female DB25, and you can plug it into this connector, and you can sit here. You can plug it into straight onto the motherboard here on this 128. So just like that, and that will work. And this keyboard's now, this 128D keyboard is now working on a 128 flat motherboard. However, those pin headers, if you don't have a real tight, perfect connection on these DB25, you may have one pin that's a little loose and it's not getting good connectivity, and you'll have several keys on your keyboard that don't work because it just isn't tight enough, right? It's plenty tight on this connector, but when this is plugged into that pin header, it's not very tight. So I didn't find that to be a good solution, and I tried a couple of different ones. I got a 90-degree DB25 as well, and tried to use that. It again wasn't tight enough. I could make it. I could bend some of the pins and get them to where they would snugly press against the side walls of the pinholes, right, and get there. But it just, I didn't like the connection on it. So I dug through my parts bin and found that 128 keyboard shell that I had, and cut the connector off and soldered it to a DB9, and it's flawless. Works perfectly. No connection issues or anything like that. You'll notice too that, you know, on a normal 128, you've got the, I made this little dongle, a dongle, you know, a little LED pigtail, whatever you want to call it. I shortened the wires, basically. Shortened the wires on a one, again, I had in my parts bin from a Commodore 64 case that had been broken, and I shortened it and made it to where I could fit it on to in the Commodore here. I mean, you know, onto the to the power light, and it just lights up on the inside, and I can see that through the clear panel on top. And so that is it, guys. That is my 128 Plexi 128, basically a 128 a flat, more in the style of a 128D, but with some nice advantages for me. Again, I didn't want the internal drives because I've got a lot of different drives. I moved them around. I didn't want the internal drive. I also didn't like the port being over here for the cassette to get power to SD to IEC and stuff like that. I really like all the stuff being on the back as much as possible. In addition to that, the one problem that I didn't necessarily solve is I'm still going to the back with the cartridges. However, this is a little bit shorter and I can reach around it. And in my use case, I'm not sitting a monitor on it. I did build it to where you can sit a monitor on it. This is a pretty thick piece of plexiglass. And I put feet along, standoffs, if you will, along the edges. And I put a peg in the center so that if I did set a monitor on here, it had plenty of support and worked great. I hope maybe that gives you some ideas about something that you can do with a 3D printer and with a 128 flat, and make yourself something this cool. At least I think it's cool. I don't know if you do, but like I said, it's a pretty nice feel to it, a nice look to it. It also matches. I've got a blue GFD 4000 that I've done a video on. I have blue accents on some of my on my IEC switches that I use, and I may talk about those one day. And so I swap out a lot, but on the for my C64 OS again that I'm going to talk about as well, I'm still I'm using a mouser on the side, so I don't have to change those ports, and that just kind of stays up in there, a wireless mouse, right? I'm still using one of these to take my keyboard up under the desk and come to my keyboard that's down here, my daily driver keyboard. So it's pretty. It solves all of my problems that I wanted to solve, because I've already got a shelf, of course, with my monitor sitting on it, so I didn't have a problem getting to the back side of the cartridge port. And plus, it's a little bit shorter than a DCR anyway. That's it, guys. I just wanted to kind of show you my creation. Hopefully I didn't ramble on too much. I've got some more videos coming up. I'm doing a lot of traveling right now, so my videos have slowed down quite a bit. But I've got to finish up my Turbo Master series. I've got one more of those coming. I'm also going to do a video on my drive collection and some of my other hardware. So I've got a lot of things that I want to do and I'm planning on doing. So I've got one that I want to do on 64 OS, because that's a really great operating system for your Commodore 64 or 128. And believe it or not, there's features that work really well on a 128 for the C64 OS. So it's pretty sweet. But anyway, I'll get to all that. Thank y'all for watching. Please, like the video. If you have any questions about what I did here, I do plan on sharing some of these STLs if somebody wants them. I'm not planning on selling this. If you have interest in the STLs, let me know, and maybe I'll post them to one of the sites. and make them available for people that maybe, you know, if somebody wants to do a grill, a car grill, maybe with a Commodore logo on it, maybe you want to duplicate some of that and see how I did that. But anyway, thanks guys. See ya.